What's up, guys? This is Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the overall markets. I'm going to break down some important news that's coming out that's going to cause some high volatility, what the news is saying about Tesla stock, and why it's doing a great job at holding up, in my opinion. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. Anyways, Tesla's doing a great job at holding up. We first and foremost have this inverse head and shoulders like pattern, which is helping Tesla uptrend. Secondly, we also have a Wyckoffyan style accumulation schematic, which basically tells us that as Tesla was dipping, we're seeing institutions buying up the share price down here. And now they're letting this thing run higher. And overall, the setup is bullish. When you draw out the trend lines, you can see that Tesla has been riding this white trend line up, just bouncing and bouncing and bouncing, approaching the shareholder meeting. And then you could also draw out a resistance like this. So this is kind of like where the resistance is as we continue to uptrend. So we're doing a fantastic job so far at holding up. But the question is, will Tesla continue to hold up like this, or does this end up getting a massive rug pull? As of right now, we look a bit more bullish, but SPY and the QQQ are sideways, if not a bit weaker, because of these wedges that are forming, and then also because we have some gaps below that could still get filled. So the overall market is flat slash somewhat in the red, whereas Tesla is showing some strength. The question is, what's affecting Tesla? Let's talk about the news, and I'll break down more details. The news is very negative for Tesla, but despite that, we managed to close green, so Tesla is still showing some resilience. So what's the news saying about Tesla this time? Well, much of the news is very negative. We're hearing all these negative words about Tesla when it comes to their European sales. For example, based off the current car registrations, we're seeing the sales in Sweden down 89%. Okay, they're down 86% in Denmark and down 50% in Norway for the month of October. Not the best of news so far. In Spain, they're also down, but in other areas such as France, they're up 2.4%. So some areas they're somewhat green, other areas they're more in the red. Always remember, the mainstream media does love to scream about how certain areas are seeing declines in Tesla sales, and they love to push that narrative. So we're going to see a lot of negative news, despite the fact that Tesla's overall sales are kind of like mixed. But it is what it is. And on top of this, Morningstar analyst known as Seth Goldstein came out, and he mentioned that once again, he thinks that many investors have gotten carried away with the enthusiasm about Tesla's robotaxi, and that Tesla is not necessarily in the fundamentals to be at the current share price. So he thinks that Tesla is overvalued, and that once again, he gave Tesla a sell rating because of that. He thinks that Tesla's overbought and that it's not really worth the price it's currently at. So that's his arguments. More negative news, which doesn't really affect Tesla right now. We're still holding up despite that. And then there's been lots of negative news coming out about what's happening with the probe from the NHTSA. Tesla's having lots of issues with door handles, and more reports keep on coming out. And then in China, there's going to be more regulations coming out around electronic door handles. So Tesla has been given up until December 10th to give more extensive records around the design, the failures, and the resolution of the customer issues. And hopefully Tesla comes to a solution as soon as possible. But there's lots of probes being opened by the NHTSA. There was another issue involving their lights, right? The light bars for the Cybertruck, and the list goes on. So lots of negative news is coming out for Tesla. Despite that, the share price still holds up, and that's because of this news right here. As a reminder, on Thursday, November 6th, 2025, at 3 p.m. Central Time, we have the annual shareholder meeting. And I think that this is why Tesla's holding up. There's a lot of excitement approaching this event. We're expecting a lot of big decisions to be made for Tesla, especially for Elon Musk's pay package. And as long as this event is on the calendars, I think Tesla is going to continue to get bought back up. We're holding up very, very nicely. But if we start pumping really hard on Tesla and we continue to uptrend approaching this event, typically what happens is the saying that goes by, the rumors sell the news, meaning we run really hard approaching events. Then once the news is in, Tesla starts to get a rug pull. So we're going to see if that happens or not. As of right now, we're just going to follow the price action, which is still holding up nicely. But just mark your calendars for this event. It's going to be very important. The most important thing is obviously Elon Musk's pay package, right? We need that to pass, or else Elon Musk is going to be less incentivized to stay at Tesla. So hopefully it passes. Most likely it will, because I think the majority of shareholders support it as they did before. So we'll see what happens. Other than that, Bank of America Securities gave us a neutral rating, and we're waiting for the next Morningstar rating to be coming up on here. The price price ratio is flat. It's going up a little bit right here. So see how this green line is going up right over here. That's a sign that Tesla's building some strength. Tuesdays tend to be green about 51.39% of the time for Tesla. So it's like a 50-50 day. But we tend to see higher volatility at 1 p.m. and then at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Historically, October is a weaker month for Tesla, but November and December are known for being better months. November, especially, is a stronger month historically. So we'll see how it goes for Tesla. So far, we're off to a very strong start. Now, for news and data, okay, tomorrow is going to be Tuesday, November 4th, 2025. We have Bowman starting us off with the speech. We have the economic optimism report at 10:10 a.m. And at 10:30 a.m., we have the New York Fed Treasury purchases. And that's pretty much it for a Tuesday. There's not really much else that's coming out because of the government shutdown. The JOLTS job openings data is not going to be coming out tomorrow because of the government shutdown. Not the best of news, at least for everyday Americans. But remember that for Wednesday, in 2 days from now, we have very important data. We have the ADP employment change coming out in the morning. Then at 9:45 and 10 a.m., we have very important services data coming out to help us know how the section is doing and how inflation is looking. So expect a lot of volatility by Wednesday. With that being said, what's happening with the markets and news? Just a couple more things, okay? Tomorrow is going to be a more quiet data day, but things get very serious on Wednesday. We also had Lisa Cook from the Fed come out and she said some very important things. She mentioned that right now she believes that there's a bigger concern of labor market weakness relative to inflationary risks. And she thinks that right now the Fed is going to prioritize the labor market based off the data we're seeing so far. I think that she had a good points to make there. And that's part of why the Fed is essentially continuing to transition away from quantitative tightening. Eventually, they're going to be turning on the money printer, right? We're getting closer to that. And I think that's very bullish for the end of the year. Now, the market may sell off a bit for a week or two. It's very possible the market does come down looking at SPY and the QQQ setups, but it doesn't really matter too much to me because it's just going to be another buying opportunity for another big squeeze because of what we're seeing from the Fed. Now, on top of this, when it comes to earnings, we have Uber, Shopify, Spotify, and Pfizer all announcing earnings before market open tomorrow. Then we have AMD and Supermicro. AMD is going to be a big one, so be ready for that. We're just getting Palantir's earnings at the time I'm recording this, and unfortunately, it's not doing too well. So the earnings were quite good, right? We beat on EPS and revenue, good growth overall. Revenue was a nice beat, and their overall guidance was decent for Q4, but it's not really enough for us to see the share price run because of the fact that much of this could be priced in. It's also because of the earnings call. As soon as that started, we started to see the share price dump. So we're going to see how it goes for Palantir. I think this is going to lead the market a bit tomorrow. We started off with this very nice pump only to dump back down. So now it's selling off. So we're going to see if this continues or not. Finally, a couple more things. Unfortunately, the government shutdown is continuing. This is very hard for everyday Americans. It's very hard for our country as a whole. And we're approaching the longest government shutdown in history by tomorrow if this continues. I'm seeing reports saying that it's going to likely continue tomorrow. There's no resolution so far. We're waiting for another funding bill to pass. We're still waiting for it. It's already November. It's been the longest shutdown in history. We're nearing that threshold, and it's just terrible news, right? It's very terrible to hear that this is going on. And I just want to say that it's also affecting data that's coming out, at least for the economic calendar and for the markets. And until we get some new updates, I do think that there's some uncertainty about this. This could be a little negative for the market as well. Until we see another funding bill, I think that that's part of why the market is a little bit shaky right now. On top of this, one last thing I want to talk about is this. The U.S. Supreme Court is going to be holding oral arguments on Wednesday over the legality of President Trump's tariffs under the law called the International Emergency the Economic Powers Act, excuse me. So this is very important. They're going to be debating about whether President Trump's tariffs are legal or not, and it's going to be affecting all kinds of tariffs from the reciprocal tariffs to his other tariffs involving sectoral duties, and the list goes on. So we'll see what happens with this. It's going to be very important for Wednesday, just something else to keep in mind. Anyways, that's it for my analysis, at least of the news. Let's focus now on the charts. So what do I see for Tesla stock? Well, we have a nice looking accumulation, but Tesla has hit a new resistance near 470. We need to hold 470. If we do, we could continue to push closer to 480. Now, if it's the opposite, And if we end up losing this 465 area, we could be dipping back down to 460. So we'll have to see what happens after that. But overall, I think we're doing a good job at holding up. I think that Tesla may consolidate again around this 465 to 470 area. Even if we come down just a little bit, that would be completely healthy. But then we could continue to reaccumulate and push higher as long as we don't lose 460. If 460 fails us, of course, Tesla could be losing and dipping back down to 456 and 448 if we lose 460. But as of right now, there's no confirmation of this. So I would not be surprised if we consolidate here before potentially bouncing and breaking out higher. So we'll just have to see how it goes. But overall, we're holding up quite nicely. So just keep that in mind. I think that's going to be very, very key, at least for us. On top of this, when it comes to SPY, I just want to mention that SPY is showing some weakness and that with Palantir selling off, I think that's part of why we're dipping alongside lots of negative news. It also depends on the data coming out on Wednesday. So to be bullish, you want to see SPY break 686. If we are bearish, you want to see us fill at 682 and then 680. Then we're coming back down to fill this gap. As of right now, it's lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, and we may consolidate tomorrow before potentially dipping lower for essentially the low 680s and maybe even this gap fill. I think that's the most likely possibility for SPY and the QQQ. So keep that in mind just in case we end up getting some kind of like rug pull or if something ends up happening. Are we about to get some kind of big dip on SPY and the others, or are we about to see some kind of run? As of right now, we're favoring consolidation and a dip lower, so just keep that in mind. The QQQ has a very similar setup. As you can tell, we're making lower highs, and lower highs. I would like to see this basically get back above 636 to break out higher. If not, we're looking for 629. If 629 fails us, we could be retesting 625. So what's happening? Well, look at this. We pumped during FOMC, then we rejected. We bounced, rejected, made a lower high, rejected, another lower high, rejection, another lower high. We just keep on making lower highs on this. I do think we consolidate for some time, but then there is a risk of us dipping lower back down to like 625 if this continues to reject because of all the negative news that's coming out. The government shutdown is going on, and also because of seasonality. I also think that if the market does end up dipping, right, if SPY and the QQQ end up dipping, and if this leads to a sell off after Tesla's big shareholder day, if we come down to fill these gaps, or even just the first gap at 617 on the QQQ, if SPY starts dumping and starts filling the first gap to 677 and the second one to 672, this is nothing more than a buying opportunity because the market is still going to remain more bullish, right? Tesla is bullish, looking for 480. We're going to see if this continues to hold up. Tomorrow, Tesla might be looking for some consolidation, looking at the current setup. I would not be surprised if Tesla consolidates for some time. But like I said before, this could just be another opportunity. As long as 460 does not break, this could still bounce again and see one more run approaching the shareholder meeting. And then after the meeting is complete, we're going to see if Tesla gets a big rug pull. Typically, what happens to Tesla is like buy the rumors, sell the news. We run approaching these big events, then we sell off afterwards. So after this meeting, that could be another catalyst for Tesla stock. We'll see how it goes. But overall, I still think that even if there is some kind of like rug pull afterwards, even if the market does end up dumping, it is nothing more than an end of the year buying opportunity, and Tesla could run like crazy towards the end of this year. I'll talk more about that later on, but just expect some consolidation in this range before we try to bounce again. Now, Nvda is also going to be leading tech. There's a double top leg setup. We need to hold above 210 to remain bullish. If not, we're favoring consolidation, then a risk back down for this gap fill back down towards 205 or below. So be careful as the downside risk is there. On Aapl, we're on a bit of a downtrend. We could be favoring 264 to 265, and we'll see if we bounce. There is some downside risk, so just keep that in mind. On Netflix, we're kind of rejecting right here. We're going to see if we retest 1100, and then we'll see if it rejects. Look for a small bounce for 1109, and we'll see what happens after that. MSTR is on a bit of a downtrend, making lower highs. Unless we get back above 273, we're going to be favoring 256 as our potential target. Celsius is on a bit of a downtrend, making lower highs right here. We're going to be watching 58.65. If that holds, we're looking for a bounce. If not, we could be dipping back down to 57.85. Supermicro is showing some weakness. We got another rejection on this. We're favoring a move back down towards 50. If it does not hold, there's a big gap down here at 48.5. We're favoring downside for now, at least technically speaking, but it depends on earnings, so keep that in mind. Part of why the market is dipping is Palantir. It pumped and dumped so far. It's going to be approaching 198 as our support. If it doesn't hold, don't forget there's lots of gaps on the daily. There's a gap down here. There's another gap down here at 189. We may start to fill some of these gaps. That would be very healthy. Rivian Big rejection on the daily time frame. It's going to be favoring a move back down to the low 13s. SoFi is favoring 30 flat and then 29.3, and we'll see if it bounces. AMD might be retesting 257 to 255, but overall it depends on earnings. Will earnings send this up, or does this get a big rug pull with this head and shoulders like pattern? I'm in the middle, guys. Anything can really happen after earnings, so be prepared for anything. ARM is looking weak. We're making a lower high, but we're going to see if 170 holds. If not, we could be dipping to 165. PayPal's on a bit of a downtrend. Unless we hold above 70, we're going to be favoring a move back down towards 67.5 or below. On Coinbase, we're on a downtrend. We're making lower highs right here. We could be favoring a move back down to 325 or below. Amazon could be retesting 250. Then we'll see if it bounces off that. It could still bounce. It's still showing some strength, but watch 250. Meta's on a downtrend unless we get back above 680. 650, excuse me, guys. We're still favoring downside for 625 or below. Google is pushing, and we're going to see if it continues to hold up. If not, it might just consolidate between 285 and 280 for now. Microsoft is barely holding 516. If it doesn't hold, though, we could be dipping to 510. And Oracle's on a bit of a downtrend. It could be looking for a move back down to 250, so I see some weakness. Finally, the VIX got a rejection. We're going to see if it bounces into the 17s or not for a slanted inverse head and shoulders, so keep that very much in mind. It could go either way. The dollar, however, is more bullish, which tends to be a bearish sign for the markets, so we are favoring downside as a stronger possibility for SPY in the QQQ. However, be very unbiased and watch your levels just to be safe. Just know that we're making lower highs on both SPY and the QQQ, and we're still favoring the downwards direction. So we'll just have to see how it goes. Last but not least, I just want to add on that Tesla is still very resilient. As we consolidate and as this thing retests 465, in case we do dip close to 460, doesn't matter. We're still holding up very nicely, and we could still very much bounce approaching the shareholder meeting. If we lose 460, I will change my mind, but for now, Tesla's showing some resilience. May consolidate and even come down a bit tomorrow, but it's not looking too bad. It's holding up nicely, and we could still bounce again as long as 460 holds. Looking for an attempt for that 480 target. But of course, the share price is going to be very dependent on how this meeting goes. So be ready for that as well on Thursday. Until I see you guys again, I thank you all so much for listening. Please have an awesome rest of your guys' days, and I'll be back very soon before market open for another update. Until then, I wish you all the best and peace out.